This week, we're at Silverstone, the home of the British Grand Prix, and for the first time in a long while, the Tuscans are let loose on the full Grand Prix circuit itself. 2 races as ever. There's the sprint and then the feature race, and the championship being led by David Mason. He's only 2 points ahead of Lee Caroline with Ben Samuelson 3rd. 4th is Phil Keane, Peter Wheeler 5th and Darren Downing 6th. But for the 6-lap sprint race here, the man on pole position is Richard Hay, and we asked him about the circuit.
It doesn't so much bring problems, actually. It's just good fun. I mean, it's got lots of long straights, so the TVR can stretch its legs a little bit. We're doing 150 mile an hour plus in parts, and it's a big, powerful car, and it's actually more fun to drive it around a big circuit like this rather than some of the smaller, twistier ones. But they all present their own challenge.
David Mason's the man that leads the championship, but he lines up only 2nd on the grid.
We're quite happy with the 2nd place. It's only 100th of a second behind Richard Hay, who's done a superb time. If we can keep the pace for the race, for both races even, it should be excellent racing. Hopefully we can have a finish at the front of the grid again.
Richard Stanton, though, is still looking for his first win, and it may, just may, come here at Silverstone.
It is a good circuit to learn. Yeah, it's quite a technical circuit, but it's a very patient circuit. You have to take your time with it. You can't throw yourself into it like a lot of circuits. But yeah, it's quite a rewarding circuit.
So, get ready then for action. This is the 6-lap sprint race here at Silverstone. We're on board with David Mason, ready for the start of a 6-lap bash around the Grand Prix circuit. The lights quickly go from red to green. The cars rumble away. Not exactly a demon start by Mason, and Richard Hay makes a storming start. That's Darren Dowling going ahead. Ben Samuelson gets past us. Lee Caroline and Richard Stanton have gone as well, but a tremendous start by Richard Hay. In the past, he's not been that good away from the green light. Here, no problems though, as the car's round. Cops corner for the first time, there's a spin. It's Giles Cooper, his 3rd race of the year, and he spins at the first corner. Oh dear. The car's undamaged, he rejoins as Hay leads Caroline, leads Dowling. In 4th place is Mason, and then 5th is Ben Samuelson, and 6th is Richard Stanton. 7th is Tim Hood, 8th is Wayne Phelan, and already Richard Hay is sprinting away. He's on the hanger straight for the first time, and look at the lead that he's got. The blue worked car, the TVR Engineering Tuscan, is in the lead of the race at the moment. Side by side for 2nd. Darren Dowling coming up the inside of Lee Caroline, trying to go through on the inside, but Caroline closes the door, round Stowe. Lee Caroline sawing away at the wheel, and that's Mason going round the outside for 3rd. Great move. David Mason goes round the outside, takes 3rd place away, down to 4th then. And there's contact! Darren Dowling slips to 4th, Mason hits Caroline. Oh dear. It could get a bit fractious this as the 2 cars run nose to tail. Caroline sideways and defending as the rest of them pour their way through club corner for the first time. All of that has further played into the hands of Richard Hay, who is sprinting away up front. Lee Caroline 2nd, David Mason just 3rd, now just 2nd, up on the inside going into Abbey. Goes through, runs a bit wide, look at Caroline fighting back as Mason slides out of the corner. Caroline goes through again, great stuff. Lee Caroline back to 2nd, David Mason falls to 3rd, and Darren Dowling is in 4th place, coming under pressure as well. Ben Samuelson's purple car is 5th, the rest of them pouring their way round with Phil Keane and Wayne Phelan together there, look. Keane round the outside going into Brooklands, very wide, over the curb he will go, but he's got the inside line for the next corner of Luffield. A replay here of the start, on board with Giles Cooper, turns into the corner. Applies the power too quickly, the back breaks away, round he goes, slides across the grass. The car swaps ends on him, but although he's going to be able to rejoin, he will do so in last place. Battle on for 2nd, it's still Lee Caroline ahead of David Mason, and Caroline having to defend very vigorously. Squeezing David Mason a little bit that time, heading up towards Abbey. Mason tucks back in behind him, Caroline not getting away, Mason looking on the inside now, going into Bridge Bend. He still can't yet find a way through, braking hard into Priory. Out of the left-hander, down now towards Brooklands, and Mason gets a little bit sideways there as he applies the power. Turns into the next left-hander of Brooklands, Darren Dowling running with them as well. Caroline not yet getting away. Now remember, they've got to use the same tyres in the 2nd 8-lap race as they do in this 6-lap one. Lee Caroline, if he stays where he is, will get himself onto the front row of the grid, of course, for the main race. He may be looking after his tyres. He may just not have the pace to get away from Mason nor Dowling. Richard Hay long gone, looking as though a win beckons then for the Worcester driver, as in the meantime, Caroline is still 2nd, Mason 3rd. They're going through. Number 8 is TVR chairman Peter Wheeler. TVR dealer Rod Barrett up behind him. Past the pit, side by side. Rod Barrett on the inside line, can he go through? Yes he can, up the inside as meantime. Coming now out of the Beckett's S's, Lee Caroline is still there in 2nd place. In 3rd is Mason, 4th is Dowling. And Richard Hay clearing off into the distance now. Onto the hanger straight. Richard Hay, former Caterham champion, leading the race, although having said he's scampering away, this time it looks as though Lee Caroline may be bringing the gap down. And Mason now having his work cut out to fend off Darren Dowling. It's only a 6-lap race, remember, turning their way now into Stowe Corner. Richard Stanton being caught as well by Phil Keane, lap 2 down at Club. Hay, Caroline, Mason, Dowling, those gaps certainly coming down a little bit now. Richard Hay, who had an enormous lead on lap 1, has lost out a little bit here. You can see those 3 behind him catching up now. Up they go towards Abbey. We're on board with David Mason. This time he's going to have another look on the inside at Abbey. Curve, is he going to go through? Yes, he is. Touches the curb, scrabbles left, scrabbles right, out of Abbey. Hay, Mason, Caroline is now the order, but Lee Caroline will no doubt try to fight back as they go into Bridge Bend. Mason covers the line. Mason is second. Now into Priory. You can see that Richard Hay should, in theory, have profited from this battle going on behind him. Sadly, that's not the case as far as Richard is concerned. He's still coming under pressure, and that's Giles Cooper having another moment. He spun at the first corner. Now he's on the grass at Abbey. It looked as though he came in too quickly and braked too late. He's back on the circuit. Hay still leading, but the gap is coming down. Starting lap 3. Hay leads, Mason second, Caroline third. And Darren Dowling a bit sideways, very sideways there in fact. Losing touch with those ahead of him now. Caroline back on the inside there, going through to Maggots. He's second. All over the curve, on the grass even, going into Beckett's. Lee Caroline's car control is masterful, and it needs to be. This is a very committed run through the Beckett's S's. Turning right and left and right and left and left now through Chapel Curve onto the Hanger Straight. Caroline second, Mason right up behind him. They're going to be side by side. Look at the way that Caroline tries to defend there, jinking across even when Mason virtually alongside him. David Mason levels with the blue and white car. Down to Stowe Corner. Can Mason go right round the outside? In the meantime, Richard Stanton has gone fourth at the expense of Darren Dowling. And now Phil Keane tries to get up into 5th place. Still Caroline and Mason are running together. They're still side by side. Look at this. Lee Caroline in the world's widest Tuscan hangs on to second. In third is the CDL car of David Mason looking for a gap on the inside, but Lee Caroline occupies the right part of the road. Mason on the limit, charging his way now up out of the right-hander then of Club Corner. These two, I reckon, on this particular lap have possibly dropped a little further back from Richard Hay. The scrap now playing into Richard's hands once more. Caroline still second, Mason is third. Down towards Bridge Bend they come. In 4th place, Richard Stanton. And if these two continue to battle like this, Stanton's going to be with them as well. That gap between 3rd and 4th is set to come down. Going now into the left-hander of Priory. There is Richard Stanton's DeWalt-backed black and yellow car in 4th place. 5th is Darren Dowling's blue one. In 6th place, Phil Keane. 7th, the black and yellow car of Tim Hood. And then in 8th place now, Ben Samuelson, who's wilting a little bit as Caroline and Mason overlap again going into Luffield. Richard Hay accelerating his way though now up across the line. Caroline second, Mason third, then a gap. 4th is Stanton, 5th is Dowling, 6th is Keane, 7th Hood, and then 8th, the purple car of Ben Samuelson. Down towards Cobb's Corner once again. Phil Keane now attacking Darren Dowling, who started well, but he's also dropping down the field a little bit. Through Cobb's Corner they go, heading up towards Maggots now. Look at the gap this time between the top two. Richard Hay is certainly being caught now by Lee Caroline. Now, whether this is Richard nursing his tyres, whether he's got a problem and he's losing speed, we know not, but you can guarantee this, that there's going to be a great battle now for the lead of the race, because Caroline has got away from Mason. He's shaken off the CDL car, so now the car run by Lee Caroline's own team, the family team, is right up behind the works car of Richard Hay. Down they come into Stowe Corner. Without the pressure of Mason, Lee Caroline can concentrate exclusively now on battling for the lead. Out of Stowe they come down towards Club. Now what can Mason do? As there you can see Keane going around the outside of Darren Dowling. What a move! Mason's back with Caroline. It's 3 for the lead then as they come into Club Corner this time. Richard Hay just being able to fend off Lee Caroline. Caroline attacking and defending at the same time. David Mason is right back with them. This is TVR Tuscan Racing at its best. They're going up towards Abbey now. Lee Caroline tucked up behind Richard Hay. David Mason looking for a way past Lee Caroline. And Caroline in the hardest job in the world here, trying to attack and defend simultaneously. Hay defending as they come into Bridge. Mason attacking as they come into Bridge Bend. Look at the way now that Lee Caroline is alongside Richard Hay. Going into Priory there side by side. Hay goes a little bit wide, gives Caroline racing room. There's a touch, I think, between the two of them. Then side by side into Bridge. Caroline up on the inside. Richard Hay on the outside line. Caroline runs wide, there's contact, and David Mason leads, and Richard Hay's in the gravel. Is the car going to stop? Is he going to get out the other side? It sinks, and it sinks, and it retires from the race. Richard Hay is in the gravel and David Mason is in the lead now. Round Woodcote to complete the lap. Mason, then Caroline, Lee Caroline on the grass. David Mason defending, and he was on the grass as well with 2 wheels. All 4 wheels on the grass by Lee Caroline though there, and somehow he got away with it and doesn't even lose any time. Incredible. I told you about Lee Caroline's car control. There's proof of it. All 4 wheels on the grass. He didn't even get sideways. He stays with only 1 more lap to go, right in the wheel track to the curb clipping. Mason, who's off at Beckett's now. What else has this race got in store? Mason through the gravel, bounces his way back on the circuit and he keeps the lead. Fantastic. Caroline on the inside, side by side into Chapel Curve, and Lee Caroline leads, but only just. What a race. Lee Caroline leads. There's half a lap to run. David Mason is behind him, down towards Stoke Corner now. Richard Hay takes off his overalls. He's about to explain to the marshals what went wrong. Let's have a look at it. Into Priory. Caroline on the inside, dives up on the inside, touches the curb, slides a little bit wide, clips the side of Richard Hay's car. Mason lines himself up for a run on the inside. Into Brooklands. Caroline on the inside. There's racing room between them. It looks as though Caroline brakes a bit too hard, a bit too late, runs out of road. Richard Hay was alongside him, got caught up in it, and into the gravel he goes. Mind you, if you speak to both of them, they may have differing accounts. We're on the last lap of the race. Lee Caroline is the leader. David Mason is second, and Caroline goes wide this time onto the grass. He's got the inside line for Luffield. Mason scrabbles around the outside of it. Fantastic racing. Lee Caroline is just, or is he just, going to hang on to win as they sprint up to the line? Yes, he is. Lee Caroline will win the sprint race. A tremendous race at Silverstone. Lee Caroline wins the race, but only just. David Mason is 2 tenths behind him at the end of a very lively sprint race in the Carlube TVR Tuscan Challenge. Third over the line, Richard Stanton. Philip Keane takes 4th. Darren Dowling will take 5th. And 6th will go the way of Ben Samuelson. And this is the battle for 8th place. Gareth Evans just fending off Wayne Phelan as they come across the line. The top 10 rounded out by Jan Persson. Gosh, time for a deep breath. Lee Caroline's your winner by 1/4 of a second from David Mason and Richard Stanton and Philip Keane and Darren Dowling, and then Ben Samuelson.
I mean, I got the jump on him through Bridge and into Priory, and then into the complex. I went down the inside of him because he shut the door on me into Priory. I got down the inside of him, and obviously he didn't want to give me the space. So it's a racing incident. I'm not sure how he'll see it, but
Lee and I were battling through all the chicanes and all the tight corners, but he seemed to be able to pull on me on the straight. I could slipstream him but not quite get past him, but then I could catch him up again some of the corners. But it was very interesting. We had a little bit of a rub in here and there.
We're ready for the feature race here on the Grand Prix circuit of the Carlube TVR Tuscan Challenge. Lee Caroline's on pole. He won the sprint. It's his 6th win of the year, and the lights go green now. A bit of creeping from 1 and 2. Away they go. Now let's see who makes the best start heading down towards Cops Corner. The front row was Caroline and Mason. The second row, Richard Stanton and Phil Keane, and it looks as though Mason will lead as they go to Cops. Yes, he will. The other man to watch, there he is, number 17, Richard Hay, starting on the penultimate row of the grid, having had that trip into the gravel in race 1. And Hay certainly is going to be somebody to watch carving his way up through the field. So the cars turn their way into the Beckett's S's for the first time. Another man to watch in this race is going to be Steve Hyde. These days he races in the British GT Championship, but he's on the back row of the grid in the car. Gareth Evans raced in the sprint race yesterday, and Steve Hyde, another quick driver, one to watch. So onto the hanger straight for the first time. Mason, Caroline, Stanton. That's the top 3. Everybody else 4th, just about, headed by Phil Keane. Tim Hood looking for a way past him. Darren Dowling and Ben Samuelson are there as well. But David Mason is leading and doing a Hay from the sprint race in the sense that he's trying to build up a lead on lap 1. This is a longer race, it's 8 laps, and we're on board with Darren Dowling. He is tucked up behind Philip Keane as they come now down towards Club Corner. Darren Dowling there on the outside of Phil Keane's car, but number 41, the green and white Keane-Mobile, goes through, gains a place up on the inside line there. Somebody off, that's Bob Ross, occasional Tuscan racer. Second race of the year in one of these cars. Round he goes at the bottom of the Vale, spins onto the grass, and David Mason is leading. Lee Caroline 2nd, Richard Stanton is now 3rd. Darren Dowling all over the back of Philip Keane, and what progress of Richard Hay. He's picking his way through the slower cars. He's got ahead of Jan Persson. His next target is Rod Barrett, and there is Hay. Steve Hyde's white car, you'll have seen there running behind him. But David Mason looking as though he might be getting away a bit now from Lee Caroline. Richard Stanton, though, is under all sorts of pressure here. Phil Keane is tucked up behind him, and so too is Darren Dowling. Dowling on the outside, and this is a replay of the start. On board with Dowling, lights go to green, away they go. Lee Caroline not that quick away from the lights. He blocked Stanton. Richard looks for a way around him on one side and then gives up and tucks into the slipstream. Has a look on the inside going into Cops. Gets a tap in the tail from a late-breaking Darren Dowling. Up over the line, it is Lee Caroline then, up front at the moment. Mason is second. So far this year, 6 wins have gone the way of Caroline, 2 to Mason, and 1 win to Richard Hay. Out of Copse Corner comes Darren Dowling. Looking at the back now of Richard Stanton's car. Stanton possibly dropping away a little bit here from Philip Keane, and Keane desperately wanting to be part of that leading group. There is Richard Hay, Snetterton winner. He's ahead of Wayne Phelan and slowing as he comes through Copse. A problem, I think, for Richard Hay. We saw this at Knock Hill, the car cutting out occasionally, and it looks as though it's happened again. The Tuscans then rumble down to Stowe Corner with Caroline, Mason and Keane, the top 3, and David Mason there almost rubbing again with Lee Caroline, trying to unsettle him. He's on the outside line as they come into the corner this time through. Richard Stanton is back with them as well, though now 4 of them nose to tail for the lead, heading down towards Club Corner. Mason up on the inside of Lee Caroline. Lee turns into the corner. He's still leading, but under real pressure. And significantly here, unlike Knock Hill, unlike Croft, he's not cleared off into the distance. Now, this is Giles Cooper's view. He's coming down the Vale, heading towards Club Corner. The white car of Steve Hyde, then Rod Barrett, and then Giles Cooper. Jan Persson is next up, then Pete Osborne taking to the grass, and that's Steve Hyde. He was in a 3-hour race here yesterday evening. For a moment, he gets confused at Club Corner. Heads over the grass, Steve Hyde bouncing back onto the circuit, and that's going to cost the former MG Midget champion a place, I think. At least a place. 1 to Wayne Phelan, another 1 to Rod Barrett, and possibly a 3rd to Giles Cooper if Steve's not careful. Steve Hyde returning to Tuscans, former front runner in the series, but at the moment he's being attacked from all directions. Giles Cooper now looking to try and find a way by on the inside line there. Can he do it? Yes, I think he can. On the inside of Bridge, is he going to be able to hold the line going into Priory? As in the meantime, here are the race leaders. Still, Lee Caroline just ahead of David Mason. They're heading into Stowe Corner now. Mason getting a tow, being sucked along by Caroline's car. He pulls to the outside, tries to go all the way around the outside of Lee Caroline coming into Stowe. Is he going to be able to do it? The 2 of them almost lean on each other. David Mason then putting 2 wheels on the curb there, sprints down the inside of the Vale. And Richard Stanton there goes round the outside. What a move! Lee Caroline so busy defending from David Mason, then they touch. Mason gets all sideways. Lee Caroline powering his way out of Club Corner, but Caroline was so busy trying to fend off Mason, he left the door wide open for Richard Stanton. Stanton's never won in a Tuscan. He leads, but Lee Caroline's fighting back as they come into Abbey. Hard on the brakes, turning into the corner now. Stanton, then Caroline. Dowling's ahead of Philip Keane as well, and David Mason's been pushed to the back of the queue. Coming into Bridge Bend, Keane looking on the inside of Dowling. Dowling, though, for the time being, hanging on to his 3rd place. What can David Mason do as well to fight back now? Coming through Priory, Richard Stanton is the man in charge. Is Lee Caroline going to be able to find a way past him again? Richard Stanton determined to score a maiden Tuscan win. He was 4th at the start of the lap, now he's up into the lead. David Mason down to 5th, working hard, trying to get himself back up the order here. The 5 of them come now through Woodcote Corner. Lee Caroline having a look up on the inside. They're going to be side by side as they come past the pits. The blue and white car of Caroline goes ahead again. Lee Caroline leads. Richard Stanton slips to 2nd. And in 3rd is Darren Dowling with David Mason, I think, now set for 4th. No, not quite. Phil Keane has other ideas and covers the line as they go to the corner. Here's a replay. Caroline defending from Mason. And Richard Stanton goes round the outside, brakes desperately late, scrabbles round the corner. There was a bit of leaning by Lee Caroline. Mason also making contact with the back of Caroline's car. They sort themselves out, get round the corner safely. Richard Stanton led for 3 or 4 more corners more, and Caroline is now leading. Ahead of them on the road is Richard Hay, who's returned to the race after a pit stop. They come then now through Stowe Corner. Caroline just ahead. Stanton just ahead of Dowling, 2nd and 3rd. Down the Vale they come. And Lee Caroline in a moment will see the man that he clashed with in the earlier race. And Dowling goes 2nd and hits Caroline and knocks him round. Darren Dowling from a long, long way back comes up the inside, leaves his braking far too late. Richard Stanton got out of his way, and Lee Caroline, the innocent victim that time for sure, harpooned by the rather errant Dowling. It knocked Lee Caroline round. He carries on in the race, but Lee Caroline can feel pretty aggrieved there. Darren Dowling tried a certainly courageous move, but it wasn't really on, was it? Brake too late. Slammed into the back of Caroline, knocked him around, and in the meantime we've got Richard Stanton back into the lead. Now in 2nd place, he's going to be Philip Keane, is it not? Yes, there he is, right on the tail of Richard Stanton's car. And in 3rd place is David Mason. If he can hang on to 2nd, it'll be Keane's best result of the year. Here's Darren Dowling's view. He gets past Stanton. Lee Caroline takes the line for the corner, and a totally locked up Dowling thumps the back of him, knocks him round. There's damage to Dowling's car, he goes across the grass. we've had two tremendous Tuscan races at Silverstone, and the man that's probably happier than anybody is Richard Stanton, because as he comes through Luffield for the last time, he is about to win for the first time. Where better than the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit? Richard Stanton takes a first ever TVR Tuscan win. Second over the line is Philip Keane, his best result ever as well. And third is David Mason. A very happy Richard Stanton at long last. He's broken his duck, he's won in a Tuscan, and he deserves so to do. Fifth over the line, Lee Caroline. Tim Hood sixth. There's a battle here going on for ninth. Giles Cooper fending off the white car of Steve Hyde as they make the run up to the line now. Steve Hyde is not quite going to get past Giles Cooper. There is the checkered flag. And there is a very happy race winner. Richard Stanton victorious by just over a second. Philip Keane second, ahead of Mason Dowling, Ben Caroline, with Ben Samuelson seventh, and Steve Hyde rounding out the top 10.
Yeah, it was a tough one, but it was quite nice because there were sort of 5 or 6 of us at the front who were swapping places all the time, and to be fair, that's what drivers like and the crowd like. And unfortunately, they didn't swap enough, so for certain people, but a lot for me.
At one point, I thought it was all going to end in tears, but luckily, me and Rich managed to stay out of the way, and then when they all crashed, we managed to get through, so it was good.
As always, though, with the TVRs, it's bloody good racing, and we're happy with third. We needed to finish in front of Lee anyway to regain the title lead, so yeah, we're quite happy with today. We would have liked to win after yesterday, but you can't win everything.
Caroline and Mason now turning this into a two-horse race. They're clambering away from everybody else in the championship. They're taking points off one another further down, but at the moment 4 points separate the top two. The Carlube TVR Tuscan Challenge is back at Snetterton in Norfolk. It was here earlier on in the season that David Mason and Richard Hay scored a win apiece. And here they arrive mid-season with Lee Caroline heading the championship by 4 points from David Mason, with Ben Samuelson third ahead of Phil Keane, Darren Dowling and Wayne Phelan in sixth. And lining up on pole for race one is that man Caroline.
I always try and focus on just winning races really, and if I win the championship then I do, but if you start totting up points I think you just play on your mind, so I just go for race win. So
still looking for a first Tuscan race win, and lining up alongside Caroline is Ben Samuelson.
Oh, I'm definitely one of the amateur drivers out there. I enjoy it a lot. I will do the best I can, and if I can show the sort of semi-pro lads a little thing or two, then that's even more fun. Little sort of notch one up for the underdog. So yeah, I'll be trying my hardest, and certainly won't be giving any quarter if none is asked.
And the same is true of David Mason. He will only start on row 2.
We should be all right from third. To be honest, pole position's not the place to be starting from here. You've got a long straight down the back, and anyone can slipstream straight past them. So it's probably not an advantage to be on pole, but I would say that being in third.
So let's see then who is going to come out on top. Race 1 about to get underway. The lights go red, the engine notes rise. Lee Caroline creeps a little bit, the lights go to green, and Ben Samuelson makes a better start. Mason's away quickly, Lee Caroline bogs down a bit, and so Ben Samuelson leads, as he did at Knock Hill earlier on in the year, heading down towards Riches. Ben Samuelson was leading, he's not now, because David Mason goes up on the inside, runs a little bit wide. Samuelson looking for a way through, there's a spinner, that's Tim Hood, are they all going to miss him? So far, I think they've all managed to succeed in so doing. Yes, they have. So a spinning Hood, and Mason leads Samuelson with Lee Caroline coming up alongside. We're on board now with Phil Keane. Down the Revit straight for the first time. Caroline goes second, and Phil Keane also now looking for a way past Ben Samuelson as they dive down side by side for the lead. Lee Caroline's going to get the lead, I think, midway around the first lap. Yes, he is. A very brave effort. Lee Caroline up into the lead then. Mason is second and looking to try to fight back on the inside line, going into the bomb hole. But Lee Caroline's got the line covered. Keane's third. Richard Hay is now fourth. And Ben Samuelson down to fifth. In sixth place going through there is number 9, Tom Ginchard, having his Tuscan debut in the CDL car that Gareth Evans and Steve Hyde have driven this year. And Ginchard up on the inside of Ben Samuelson. Down to Russell. Ben gets all crossed up as Ginchard comes past him. It might have been a bit physical, that, I think, maybe. They kick up the cement dust then as they power out of Russell up across the line. It's Lee Caroline leading and getting away a bit already. Phil Keane goes second as they turn into Riches. In third place, tucked out behind him there is David Mason. And what's going on for fourth is Richard Hay pulling away now from Tom Ginchard. But the fight's on for second place between Keane and Mason. Lee Caroline, who is becoming the man to beat in the championship this year, is leading again, and he's getting away with David Mason, who we know is a quick driver. We know he's normally one of the front runners, looking now for a way to get back up into second place. This is Philip Keen's view, heading down towards the S's. Mason on the inside. Number 2, David Mason going for second place. There's contact though, he leans on Keen. Phil Keen's car gets all crossed up. He manages to hang on to it pretty effectively though. But all of this is just delaying the 2 drivers involved, and it's allowing now Lee Caroline to get away. On board with Tom Ginchard, running a little bit deep into the bomb hole, now into Coram Curve. The CDL car losing out. Ben Samuelson goes ahead of him. They're trying to stay away from that cement dust and the oil that it's there to try to soak up. Samuelson on the inside line into Russell, gets it all crossed up, and round he goes. Ben spins. Tom Ginchard goes rally crossing in avoidance. And Ben Samuelson, I'm afraid, has thrown away at least one place. Tom Ginchard accelerating his way now up over the line. Has Ben Samuelson rejoined? Yes, he has, but he's a long way back. In fact, he may well now be last after that spin. We haven't had Ben spinning for a while, but he's gone back to his bad old habits of a few years ago. Here's the replay. Up on the inside. He's on the wrong line. Brakes too hard, too late. The back comes round. And Ben Samuelson eventually gets the car out of everybody's way, spins it around to rejoin the race, but the problem is that drops him to flat last. Bob Ross ahead as Samuelson powers his way over the line. They're going through. Number 5, that's Wayne Phelan. The car looking a bit of a patchwork quilt job in the sense that after an accident earlier on in the weekend, some of the body parts are those used by the Britnell brothers last year. So on one side it's an SAS livered car, on the other side it's the InWeb Insane Racing livery. He's heading his way now down through the S's. He's got Ben Samuelson catching up. You can see the tank tape fluttering in the breeze there. The InWeb car powering its way up towards the bomb hole. And also recovering is Tim Hood, who there... Oh, contact! That's Giles Cooper who goes off. I was about to say Tim Hood goes up the inside of Rod Barrett. It's David Porter that's been involved as well, but Giles Cooper with a rather crumpled car. He's trying to rejoin. But they're all a bit even nastier at the bomb hole. Back on board with Ben Samuelson, coming now down towards Russell. Through he goes, using a bit of the curbing there to good effect, but he's ahead of Wayne Phelan. Giles Cooper trying to rejoin, and Dave Porter, who I don't think we've seen out of the championship all year, also with a damaged car, looking as though that's the end of his race. For second place though, David Mason coming back at Phil Keen, and through he goes. Up on the inside, he turns left and right through the S's, and Richard Hay is joining in as well now. Richard Hay's been a bit subdued so far this weekend, but he's looking to fight back now as the rather crossed up Mason goes through the bomb hole, finds lots of debris in the middle of the road there. Tim Hood this time is ahead of Rod Barrett, who he was trying to find a way past last time we looked, and Ben Samuelson goes ahead of Rod Barrett, the TVR dealer, as well. And gets sideways again and goes round again. Dear oh dear, this isn't the Ben Samuelson we've been used to seeing this season. Ben gets the car back in the right direction. More places lost. He's back to where he started now. He's flat last once again. Hugh Marshall there going through. That's David Porter going past him in number 50. Well, Porter has carried on, albeit having been involved in Giles Cooper's incident earlier in the race. You can see another chunk of bodywork missing at the back of Porter's car. The leading train onto the Revit straight once more. There's Richard Hay. Next month he's set to be part of the Works TVR effort at Le Mans, and he's chasing Philip Keen, who in turn is chasing David Mason. And Lee Caroline, Hay's arch rival of this season, is the man in charge once again as they come down towards the S's. Richard Hay then setting himself up now for a run to try to get onto the podium at the expense of Philip Keen. They're heading now in towards the right-hander of the bomb hole. Avoid the debris if they can. Power now towards Coram Curve. Turning his way through Coram is Hay, and ahead of him you can see the battle going on still between Mason and Keen. Mason hasn't given up totally trying to catch Caroline, and nor for that matter has Philip Keen given up on his efforts to get past David Mason. This little battle you're looking at is at the moment between Tom Ginchard and Tim Hood. Hood recovering after his lap 1 spin. Down to the S's they come, nose to tail. Hood looking one side and then the other. Can't yet find the gap to get past the ex-mini stocks and Formula Ford racer. And Ben Samuelson has ahead of him a battle between Dave Porter and Rod Barrett. Porter going up on the inside, gains the place. Then gets sideways, coming out of the S's, sorts himself out again. Rod Barrett can't go through. And Ben Samuelson also looking for a way by. Barrett's Colin Blower run car runs a little bit wide. The works car of Samuelson powers up the inside. David Porter goes off. Porter gets all sideways. Off he goes. Exit stage left. Now, has he hit anything solid? Normally at Coram, the answer is yes if you go off. Well, there he is. He's on the grass. He's trying to rejoin, but that was a big old lose there for Dave Porter. The former Rover Road Saloon racer back into the race then. But for how much longer? He heads down towards Russell. He may well head for the pit lane as there over the line go Barrett and Phelan running side by side. Both of them who've improved immeasurably over the last couple of years in the series. They've got Ben Samuelson ahead of them as they turn into the first corner of Riches. Accelerating up now towards the right-hander of Sear. Phelan there in the rather tatty car with all the tank tape on it, looking for a way by. In the meantime, though, the race leaders are coming down once more towards Corham. There's Phil Keane going through in third place. Now, he's fallen too far away from David Mason to realistically challenge for second now. And Richard Hay possibly still in with a chance of taking third place before the end of the race. Into Russell they come. Lee Caroline making his way now up across the line. He's about to lap Hugh Marshall with the CDL car. There's the third and fourth fight. Keane and then Hay make their way up across the line. Phil Keane switching to Tuscans at the end of last year after being in Formula Renault before that. And the former Caterham champion, Richard Hay, riding shotgun, looking for a way through as Phil Keane's under pressure. The car looking a little bit more ragged now as the first of the two races here at Snetterton wears on. This is Keane's view heading up towards Sear. Richard Hay shadowing him every inch of the way. Out of the right-hander along the Revit straight. It looks as though we are going to have a win for Lee Caroline. Although David Mason has managed now to shake off the efforts of Phil Keane, he's not, I don't think, going to get close enough to challenge Caroline before the end of the race. The ex-Colin Blower team car then, now run by Caroline Racing. Lee Caroline, the driver, turns his way out of the bomb hole. Dave Porter waves Phil Keane through. Porter carrying on despite having had a rather checkered race here. Out of the bomb hole then comes Lee Caroline. Another victory beckons. The checkered flag is going to be shown to him this time. He's also going to put himself onto pole position for the feature race here. Into and out of Russell. David Mason still chasing on behind him. They're going to finish 1-2, but Lee Caroline will win yet again this year. Another victory goes the way of Lee Caroline in the Carlube TVR Tuscan Challenge. Over the line for second is David Mason. And Phil Keane fends off Richard Hay for third place. A very happy Lee Caroline then, the race winner. And David Mason, Keane, Hay, Hood and Tom Ginchard round out the top six. Ben Samuelson recovering after all his spins for seventh ahead of Ron Barrett and Wade Phelan. Bob Ross 10th.
Not as bad as normal, but I didn't get a very good start. I went to go and then the lights didn't go, so I hesitated. But I got a good draft on Ben down the back straight, and it just managed me to go round the outside of David under the bridge. So it was a nice move. I was quite pleased with it myself. But and then I just tried not to look in my mirrors because I know they wouldn't give me much space. So just head down and drive as fast and as casually as I could.
Struggled to get past Phil. We drove a good race. And it was just a battle to try and catch Lee, but Lee was driving similar sort of standard, so it was awkward to catch.
I got up to second and started following Lee, and then so I think we pushed the tyres a bit hard and I started losing a bit of traction out the bend, so I thought it was best if I let Mason pass because he was obviously quicker and just try and hang on to him.
The second race of the weekend here for the Carlube TVR Tuscan Challenge. Spectators soon to be stirred from their slumbers because race 2 is about to get underway. Pole position, Lee Caroline. David Mason's alongside him. Phil Keane and Richard Hay on the second row. The third row, Tim Hood and Tom Ginchard. And watch Darren Dowling starting flat last as the lights go green. Away they go. Rather tardy start from one or two of them as they make the run down to the first corner. Let's see who gets the better start. Again, Lee Caroline not that rapid away from the blocks. It's going to be David Mason ahead of Richard Hay then, who's first and second. Caroline's third, Phil Keane fourth, Tim Hood fifth, Tom Ginchard sixth, as they round Riches for the first time and head now up towards Sear Corner. Richard Hay, a good start, running a little bit wide though there, the CDL car of Tom Ginchard, who's been an impressive newcomer. And look at number 7, Darren Dowling. From last on the grid, Dowling already in midfield as they make the run now along the Revit straight, heading down towards the S's. The race leader is David Mason, second and third. Hay and Caroline ahead of Keane, then Hood and Darren Dowling absolutely slicing his way through the field. So Richard Hay at the moment in second place, but for how much longer? Because he's got Lee Caroline up behind him. Remember, they crossed swords at Donington. They did so again at Silverstone in the most recent meeting of the championship. And Lee Caroline now will be wanting a way past Richard Hay very swiftly indeed. Darren Dowling's the other man with a mission here to get past Tim Hood first of all as they come down towards Russell. Up the inside, almost leans on Hood's car, can't find a way past him. And now the leaders make their way up across the line. The leader is getting away at the moment. That's David Mason. Richard Hay at the moment, I reckon, maybe holding up Lee Caroline a little bit. Ben Samuelson there was on the grass as they came out of Russell. Hay, Caroline, then Keane, and then Darren Dowling goes ahead of Tim Hood on the inside line there, turning his way round Riches. The purple car that we saw rally crossing was Nigel Tuste, not Ben Samuelson, because Ben is next in the queue, as there you can see the fight's on for second place. Hay versus Caroline. Lee Caroline makes the run up alongside Richard Hay as they go down towards the left and right of the S's once again. And Phil Keane still riding shotgun in 4th place, possibly waiting for it to end in tears ahead of him. It's happened before this year. Richard Hay braving it out on the outside line. Lee Caroline hasn't yet found a way by, switches sides, gets the run on the inside line. Is there a gap for him? No, there's not. Richard Hay covers the line, defending well here. Phil Keane's back in touch, and then 5th, up from last on the grid, is Darren Dowling. Phil Keane turning his way then now through Coram. Lee Caroline again, having a look on the inside, diving down to Russell, shouldn't be able to go through on the inside, he does so, and Darren Dowling arrives from nowhere and gets ahead of Hood, and there's somebody else off. Is that Ben Samuelson, perchance? It is. He's missed out Russell altogether, he's gone way out across the grass, so Mason now leads, Lee Caroline is 2nd, Richard Hay 3rd, Darren Dowling is 4th, 5th is Phil Keane, 6th is Tim Hood. What chance a bit more progress from Darren Dowling here. This is a replay of Ben Samuelson's moment. Coming through Coram, gets it all loose, just about catches it, but in so doing, he has to let the car carry him down towards Russell, and it does so on the grass, heads for the tarmac. Back in the race now, Ben Samuelson accelerates away, but he did the right thing there. He didn't fight the car, try and force it back onto the circuit and risk it swapping ends on him. He just let the car follow its own line, gathers it all back together and carries on. Somebody off, that's Tim Hood going right the way round. Is he going to hit anything solid? No, he's not, thankfully. Not that often you find a car coming to rest there at Coram. Tim Hood hopefully can carry on in the races. In the meantime, we've got David Mason being caught a little bit now by Lee Caroline. This, the slightly longer of the two races, 15 laps to the 13 that we had in race 1. And Lee Caroline then with a fair old gap to reduce. Still, I reckon we'll be able to have a good go at so doing. Hay is 3rd, 4th is Darren Dowling, and then in 5th place as they make the run once more onto the Revit Straight is Phil Keane. Darren Dowling going very well here, looking for a way past the worked car, the TVR engineering run car of Richard Hay. But David Mason getting a bit worried now, possibly. He knows this gap's coming down as Darren Dowling has a look on the inside. He gets past Hay. Dowling goes 3rd. Is he going to have a go for 2nd off Lee Caroline? He's going to have a go, but he can't do anything about it just yet as the race leader, a rather sideways David Mason, emerges from the bomb hole. Lee Caroline going after him now. We're on board with Tom Ginchard making the run up alongside Ben Samuelson down towards the S's. Tom Ginchard on the inside should be able to go through there. He does, except he's on the wrong line for the next part of the corner. Ben keeps the line, then runs wide, loses the place. Tom Ginchard goes ahead of him, and after a bit of arm twirling, Ben Samuelson's got it all gathered under control again and accelerates his way now out of the bomb hole, down towards Coram Curve. Down towards Russell, hard on the brakes, down through the gears, swing right, whoops, Ginchard all sideways ahead of him, across the grass, back onto the tarmac, runs wide of course, he's got the wrong line into and therefore out of the corner, and accelerating now, up across the line. Having a run on the outside now is Ben Samuelson. Can he power his way back ahead of Tom Ginchard? This is Ben's view. He's on the outside line, he's got his nose in front, but Tom Ginchard's got the quicker line for the corner, and Tom goes back ahead of Ben. Great battle between the two. Tom Ginchard having his first Tuscan races this weekend. And look at this for the lead. Suddenly Lee Caroline is ahead of David Mason. From a long way back, he's caught him, he's passed him, and now we've got a new leader again. Lee Caroline's up front. Back on board with Ben Samuelson. Down the Revit Straight, Tom Ginchard trying to defend. Samuelson goes to the outside line. Now it's the wrong place to be for part 1. It's the right place for part 2 of the S's. And Tim Hood tries to split them. Samuelson goes ahead, Hood goes ahead as well. Tom Ginchard losing 2 places then as they come into and now out of the S's. The TVR PR man, Ben Samuelson, then getting himself up the order as Lee Caroline is leading once again. Can he make it another double? Making his way up now, out of Russell, heading across the line. David Mason losing touch now in 2nd place, and I'm just thinking as Mason goes across the line, it doesn't sound totally well, that car. That's Tom Ginchard having a moment, sorting himself out, carrying on. So Samuelson, Hood, and a very committed Ginchard, the order of this little battle, but yet it almost sounds as though David Mason's got a gearbox problem, either a shortage of them or he's stuck in a gear. Certainly the car's lap times have shot up. He's got a problem, no argument about it. Ben Samuelson locks up them, makes his tyres a strange shape and goes off all over the grass. Just about follows the rough outline of the circuit, heading towards the black bit once again, and somebody else having a moment is Wayne Phelan, who goes right the way round. And the car of many colours is about to rejoin. Off it goes, and Richard Hay goes off as well. Richard Hay sorting himself out just about at the S's, but he came in too quickly on the wrong line. That gives you the wrong line for the second part of the corner as well. It's put him on the grass, and so now the order is Caroline ahead of Mason. Then in 3rd place, Darren Dowling. with Phil Keane 4th and Richard Hay down to 5th. And here's a replay. Richard Hay chasing after Dowling, comes into the S's very, very rapidly, runs out of road, gets 2 wheels onto the dirt. You're on the wrong line for the first part, you're on the grass for the second part of the S's, and that means that Richard Hay loses a place, and David Mason's coming under more pressure now. This car that's getting slower and slower has been caught by Darren Dowling. Remember, Dowling started last. He's now making a bid for second place, going down towards Rich's. Phil Keane 4th, next in the queue as they make the run down to the first corner. Lee Caroline, though, with the fastest lap of the race to his credit, he's pulling away from Darren Dowling, the new second place man. In 3rd is David Mason, and in 4th at the moment is Phil Keane. But you rather get the feeling that Keane can get past the troubled Mason as well here. That's Ben Samuelson again, and he's going off again, just as he did earlier on, this time through the gravel. He's not been there before, and Ben busily waving at anybody he can find, possibly, I think, suggesting there's something on the road. Well, Ben's found it. I'm not sure how many others have. Just having a look next time around, see if we can see anything slippery on the circuit, but it looks as though from the semaphore, as though Ben Samuelson reckons he's found some oil down on the road that the marshals aren't telling anybody else about. This is for second place. This is Dowling ahead of Phil Keane, who's ahead of Mason, and before long he's going to be ahead of Dowling. Muscles his way up the inside. Dowling gets knocked sideways, knocked round, in fact. All the way round he goes. That was a rather robust effort by Phil Keane. Well, it was successful, but I'm not really sure it was meant to happen like that. David Mason goes ahead of Dowling as well, and Richard Hay's barrelling along behind him, and Hay having a look on the inside line. Through he goes. Richard Hay gains a place back. That was a pretty lousy lap for Darren Dowling, and in fairness, it wasn't really his fault. I know he can be a bit physical at times, but Phil Keane came charging along, went for a gap that was only half a Tuscan's width, and rather elbowed his way through. Mason then, desperate to see the checkered flag, loses out because Darren Dowling gets past Hay and Mason on the run down to the first corner. So, we've now got, as the race order, Caroline, Keane and Dowling, and here's a replay. Phil Keane coming into the bomb hole, goes for a gap. Now watch Darren Dowling ahead of him. He gets a little bit sideways, an opportunity presents itself on the inside, but all 4 wheels behind the white line there for Phil Keane. Darren Dowling tried to take the line from the corner, they met in the middle, and Darren Dowling knocked sideways. But Lee Caroline's on target for yet another win. Down he comes then, into Russell, he turns right, he turns left and accelerates now up towards the start and finish line. 2 out of 2 at Snetterton. Lee Caroline then is going to take an even greater advantage in the championship. He wins here at Snetterton. There is the checkered flag. Coming through for second place will be Philip Keane. Darren Dowling's on target for 3rd. And David Mason, the walking wounded, on target now for 4th place. Richard Hay unable to quite get himself onto terms there before the end of the race. And David Mason will come away, certainly not with the result he wanted, but it could have been a whole lot worse for the ever underfunded David Mason. There he goes now across the line, chased home by Hay, and then Tim Hood to round out the top 6. So Lee Caroline has done it again. This time he wins by 11 seconds from Phil Keane, then Darren Dowling ahead of Mason, Hay, Hood with Ginchard, Samuelson, Rod Barrett and Hugh Marshall rounding out the top 10.
Richard Hay, because of our troubles, we've had a close battle, and I didn't want to get in his way or, take a move I shouldn't. So it took me a little time to get past Richard, and then I was wheeling in David, and unfortunately his gearbox went. Otherwise, I think it would have turned out to be a great finale. So
it was hard work trying to keep up with them. Then when there was all on the track, Richard Hay hit it and came off, and Darren Dowling was being a bit cautious, and I managed to catch him up and get past him.
I thought, let them do all their stuff, I'll catch him up. Then David started to lose a lot of oil, so then I had to go off a line, which obviously my lap times went right down. Lee got a big gap. Then after about 5 or 6 laps, I thought, well, the oil's bound to be gone now, because it's bound to all come out of David's car. Went back on a racing line, and hey, shouldn't have done that. And then Phil caught me up, went up the inside of me around the bomb hole, because then I was spanned because we had a bit of a touch. Got back on, and then just drove past them again, David and Richard Hay up the start-finish straight. And then I thought, right, that's it, I'm just going to offline racing from there on and finish the race. So that's what I did.
So Lee Caroline heads the championship with David Mason and Ben Samuelson 2nd and 3rd. Phil Keane 4th ahead of Phelan, and then Dowling with Tim Hood in 7th. Just a week after TVR returned to Le Mans after a break of 40 years, the TVR Tuscan Challenge hits Castle Combe for round 7 of the series. As ever, there's an enormous crowd on hand to watch the action and to see a championship led by Lee Caroline. David Mason is 2nd, with Ben Samuelson and Philip Keane 3rd and 4th, ahead of Wayne Phelan and Darren Dowling. And that man, Caroline, to nobody's great surprise, will start on pole position for the first of the 2 races here, the shorter 10-lap sprint race.
It's a very good circuit, one of my favourites, so I enjoy racing it.
Second on the grid, Richard Hay. His expectations for Castle Combe, though, are what?
I would think a fairly close battle at the front. Lee and I think there's 21 hundredths of a second, or 21 thousandths, I forget, but it's not very much, about that much. So there's about that between us. I would think that the 2 of us would be fairly close. I'd also watch out for David Mason, who's had a shocker of a qualifying session. He's something like 8th, and keep an eye out for him because I think he'll fly.
And also keep an eye out for Ben Samuelson. TVR's PR man lines up 3rd.
It'll be close, I would have thought, because Lee and Richard have been quite close on the circuit a number of occasions in the past. So that's Phil Keane, who's a point behind me. I'm in 3rd and Jamie, he's in 4th. I think Phil will be quite keen to get past. So we'll see what happens there. And of course, David Mason coming through from the back should be fireworks as he comes through, although he'll probably be up with me by about, quarry on the first lap, knowing David.
Let's see whether that's going to be the case then, because the first of the 2 races here is about to get underway. It does so now. David Mason in number 2 bolts away, makes a good start. It's Richard Hay, I think, that gets his nose in front. Yes, it is. Lee Caroline makes a sluggish start. Ben Samuelson going for a gap in the middle there as well. Caroline holds on to 2nd, 3rd Samuelson, 4th is Mason as they go up towards Quarry for the first time, but it's Richard Hay in the lead. And one of his Le Mans co-drivers, Richard Stanton, we're on board with him now, losing out there to Tom Ginchard going up towards Quarry. Tom Ginchard in only his 2nd Tuscan meeting. Richard Stanton, remember, had a win at Silverstone as the cars fan out as they make their way up towards the S's for the first time. Hay ahead of Caroline, and up into 3rd place goes Darren Dowling, ahead of Ben Samuelson 4th. David Mason is 5th, and in 6th is Tim Hood. Through Old Paddock for the first time. Hood number 10, fending off Philip Keane, but Richard Hay doing his best now to break clear of the rest of them. Lee Caroline going with him. It's the top 2 that are inching away, look. Rather crossed up Darren Dowling in 3rd place as they swing through. Tom Ginchard there going after Philip Keane in number 41. And a pretty bad first lap, it must be said, by Richard Stanton. He's dropped way down the order from 7th on the grid, as in the meantime the leaders blast out of Bobby's up towards Camp Corner to complete lap 1. On board now with Tom Ginchard, Philip Keane ahead of him. Down to Camp Corner, down through the gears, swing right, packed crowd look on the left there. Through the corner, up over the line, the top 2 breaking away, and Ginchard also with a problem. Losing a lot of time to Keane, and the car is clearly not a healthy one. Tom Ginchard at the end of lap 1, I fear he's going to have to head to retirement. Yes, he is. Leaders there, up through Quarry. Fight on for 4th now. Mason looking for a way past Ben Samuelson, and Ben in turn looking to get past Darren Dowling. David Mason there, trying to get the run on the inside of Ben Samuelson. He can't do it. Ben likewise looking for a way past Darren Dowling. Through the S's they come. The floppy markers go flying there. I think that was Tim Hood that was demolishing them. And Hood really having a go now to get past David Mason. Remember, these are 4.5 litre cars, identically prepared. And very close, dramatic racing is always the result. As now Samuelson has a look on the inside of Dowling, and through he goes, up into 3rd place there. Good move. Ben Samuelson goes 3rd, and now David Mason trying to go through as well. A replay of Richard Stanton's rather less than exciting getaway. Up through the gears, loses out to Rob Barrett, who comes past him. Philip Keane was a bit sluggish away as well. Battle's going on ahead. And Richard Stanton lifts, the car accelerates away now. He's lost a fair chunk of time, and now another place as well. Tom Ginchard comes charging past him. Stanton, the driving force behind getting TVR back to Le Mans, returning to the sort of car he made his race debut in a few years ago, TVR Tuscan. But Richard Hay, the former Caterham champion, is fending off Lee Caroline, but only just. They're all bunching up again now as Caroline has a go for the lead. Heading down towards Tower, there's a gap on the inside. Richard Hay gives him racing room, and Lee Caroline goes through. These 2 cross swords on more than one occasion this year. Here, though, Caroline is ahead. Richard Hay coming under immediate pressure from his teammate. Ben Samuelson is tucked up behind Hay now. Then in 4th place, Darren Dowling. Having got himself ahead, though, I just wonder whether Lee Caroline is going to streak away. He may well do so now. Into Camp Corner he comes. Hay 2nd, 3rd is Ben Samuelson. And going off here is Jan Persson. The Swedish driver sorts himself out, fires the car up again, off he sets. What was a TVR-built lawnmower becomes a race car once again, and the London-based Swede rejoins after that mistake at Bobby's. Thankfully, no harm done to the car. Won't have done his tyres any good, and it's cost him a lot of time. Philip Keane there, looking the green and white car, looking for a way past Tim Hood to no avail. Hood being very defensive. And I'm still a little bit surprised that David Mason's progress hasn't been more exciting than this. He's up behind the armada of blue cars there, you can see, as they swing their way now up out of Old Paddock. David Mason's yellow and blue Tuscan, run by CDL, still with work to do as again Keane has a look past Hood, can't do it, gets squeezed onto the grass there. Richard Stanton right up behind him as they swing out of Tower, making the run now up towards Bobby's. Stanton joining in this battle. Takes Richard a lap or two to get into his stride. He's done that now, and the car getting quicker and quicker and quicker all the time. Down to Camp Corner. Again, Philip Keane ahead of him, making a bid through on the inside. Can he go? Yes, he can. Philip Keane gains a place ahead of Tim Hood. Richard Stanton powering his way up past the pit. So Caroline leads Hay, leads Samuelson, and look at this for fourth. Downing just ahead of Mason. They go now up towards Quarry. They're about to turn into the right-hander. And Ben Samuelson in car number 58 coming under real pressure. Dowling and Mason right up behind him. Darren Dowling, who's actually been able to afford himself the luxury of a new set of slick tyres for this weekend rather than running on old second-hand rubber. Well, at the moment, he's not having all the difference because he's trapped there in fourth place behind Samuelson and defending from David Mason as well as they go now into El Paddock. Keane ahead of Hood as we saw, and Richard Stanton looking for a way past the two. Hood goes wide, that'll delay him a little bit. Richard Stanton's got the run on him now, going down towards Tower. Is there a gap on the inside? Only just, and Richard's going to go for it. Up on the inside, through he goes. The DeWalt Tools car finds a way through. That was a brave effort by Richard Stanton, and it gains him a place. A much improved driver compared to when he first came into Tuscan racing at the end of the 90s. Richard Stanton now making progress up through the field. Lee Caroline, though, despite leading, is not getting away, is he here? Richard Hayes keeping him honest. Philip Keane now, having lost out to David Mason, trying to fight back, but Mason going well. Up through Folly, then Avon Rise towards Quarry Corner. We're back on board with Richard Stanton. Relatively clear road ahead, striving, of course, as he is, to catch those cars ahead of him now. And Keane goes back ahead of Mason. Phil Keane moves ahead of Mason once again, and also you've got Dowling and Samuelson side by side. They lead on each other. Darren Dowling, I think, has got the better line. He should go through, and Philip Keane looking to follow him by as well, up towards the S's. Dowling takes third off Samuelson. Keane still there in fifth place. Ben getting a little bit crossed up, and again, Phil Keane looking for a gap. Through he goes. He relieves Ben of fourth place now, so Keane fourth, Samuelson fifth, and Mason sixth. Now, while they're scrapping like that, it's delaying them all, of course, and you can see how much closer Richard Stanton is now. Down towards Tower, turn right, back onto the power once more, up towards Bobby's. Great battle going on here, and Richard Stanton has now joined it. Don't rule out the black and yellow car at the rear of this group. It could yet gain another place or two before the end. Keane, then Samuelson go past us, down towards Camp Corner. Into the right-hander, Philip Keane, the former Renault racer, with Ben Samuelson, who's only ever raced a TVR behind him, but somebody off, that's Mason! Mason losing it, round once, he goes round twice. The dust is still settling, and that was a big lose from David Mason. It's cost him a place. Thankfully, the car is undamaged, and Mason will rejoin now, one hopes. Darren Dowling locking up, as now ahead of him is Phil Keane, getting all crossed up at Quarry. Sorts himself out, but that now puts Keane up into the top three. Great race here at Castle Combe. Lee Caroline is leading in second place, Richard Hay, and now third is Philip Keane. One of the criticisms this year of the TVR Tuscan Challenge has been that the entry isn't as big as it has been in the past. Well, in some respects, it doesn't matter at all because the quality of racing has been exceptional. And look at this, as now Dowling goes wide, gets all sideways. Samuelson's alongside him. He's going to have the inside line, and he's got the place as well as they come into Tower. Ben Samuelson goes through. That puts him fourth. Fifth is number 7, Darren Dowling. In sixth place now is Richard Stanton. And David Mason having dropped a long way back from this group now after that spin we saw. The leading group accelerating now down towards the right-hander of Camp Corner. There you can see side by side again, Samuelson and Dowling. Ben on the inside line, hanging onto his fourth place, and Richard Stanton is reeling them in all the time. Over the line have gone the leaders. It's still Caroline from Hay, and Richard Hay not dropping back here either. Philip Keane in third place. He's already done the best lap of the race, by the way, at 67.7 seconds. And Richard Stanton now looking for a way past Dowling and Samuelson. He's alongside Dowling as they come into Quarry. Can he go through on the inside? He should be able to there. Out of the corner now, up through the gears, heading towards the S's. Richard Stanton moving himself up into fifth place. There you can see fourth and fifth. Samuelson just ahead of Stanton. Tim Hood thumping the curb, launching himself into the S's in the background. Back on board with Stanton, going for a gap on the inside. No, you don't, says Samuelson. Now Richard Stanton tries to switch sides. He goes for it. There's barely enough room, but he's done it. What a move! Richard Stanton sticks his elbows out, slithers up the inside. That was a very brave effort again. And Richard Stanton found a gap that was only just the width of a Tuscan, and through he went. So Stanton now puts himself up into 4th place. Has he got time left in which to do anything about Philip Keane? Here's a replay from Stanton's car of David Mason touching the curb a little bit too quick through camp. The back comes round and exit stage left. Twice round goes Mason. In the meantime, though, Lee Caroline heading for what is going to be a 9th win of the season. He's on his last lap. The gap has opened up as well between Caroline and Hay. Richard's car hesitated coming out of Bobby's a lap ago. It means he's dropped back from Lee Caroline, and he's being caught as well by Philip Keane. So 2nd and 3rd very close as they round tower here. The blue car of Hay, the white and green one of Keane. Then Stanton in 4th place as they go down now towards Bobby's. Lee Caroline, though, powering his way up out of the final sequence of corners. He's only got camp to go, and then win number 9 of what's been a very impressive run to the season so far will go the way of Lee Caroline and the Caroline Racing Team. Out of camp he comes. Checkered flag falls. Lee Caroline wins the sprint race here at Castle Combe. 2nd over the line, Richard Hay. 3rd is Philip Keane. And look at this, Darren Dowling and Tim Hood come across the line absolutely nose to tail there. So an excellent race for Lee Caroline. He's the race winner. That's his 9th victory of the season, with Hay and Keane 2nd and 3rd. Stanton 4th ahead of Samuelson, and then Dowling with Hood 7th ahead of Barrett, Phelan and Peter Wheeler in 10th.
I've got him through the S's round the back, so once I got in front of him I just tried not to look in my mirrors, but I looked in my mirrors with a couple of laps to go and he was still there, so you know, he didn't give me any room to pull away, so I just had to watch what I'd done for the last 2 laps, really.
Well, to be honest, we'd agreed before, because we've had a moment or two together this year, and we'd agreed before, we make sure we left one another plenty of room. And I figure this place is so hard that it would be better to let him by anyway and let him do the hard work, just make him work for a little bit. So I did that, and then lap before the end, just coming out of the 2nd chicane, went from 3rd to 4th, and the engine just died. And it may even be my fault. I may have hit the limiter, which may be why it did it, but it cut out for about 2-3 seconds, which meant that I was right with him, and I'd just been sitting there waiting the whole race. So I'm very disappointed. It's probably down to me as well.
Yeah, the car took a while to come on, which was good because normally it goes off a bit towards the end. So by the time when it came on, though, it was really good, but it just took a while. That's all.
We're ready for the feature race of the Carloom TVR Tuscan Challenge. It should have been 12 laps, but earlier delays in the day mean it's down to 10, the same as the sprint race distance, therefore. And it's go with Lee Caroline and Richard Hay on the front of the grid, blasting away. But the best start of all is from Ben Samuelson, who rockets down the inside, and it's Samuelson who leads from the 3rd row of the grid. Both the front row drivers a little bit sluggish away in comparison, and so a wonderful start by Samuelson puts him in the lead as they go now towards Quarry for the first time. Turning their way through the right-hander. Somebody off there, that's Richard Stanton going across the grass. Not entirely sure why he's on the grass, but he's going to get back on the tarmac now. That will drop Richard Stanton right to the very back of the field. So Samuelson leads Caroline, then Mason in 3rd and Richard Hay 4th. Up they come for the first time in towards Old Paddock. Through the right-hander, and that's Philip Keane, hard at work in car number 41, but a great start by Ben Samuelson. Now, we saw this at Knock Hill, remember, a month or so ago. Once he's in the lead, he can normally defend pretty well. Lee Caroline is 2nd, David Mason is 3rd, and the rest of the field filing through. Up towards Bobby's, on target then to complete lap 1 in the lead is Ben Samuelson. Lee Caroline is going after him, though. Keep your eyes peeled as well for a certain yellow and black DeWalt car, because Richard Stanton has work to do from the back of the grid. Lee Caroline having a look on the inside for the lead. Will he go through? Yes, he will. Well, they're side by side, in fact, as they come across the line, but Lee Caroline on the inside line should now be able to go through. He's got the quicker line for the next part of the circuit. Caroline leads. David Mason looking for 2nd as well off Samuelson. Heading up now towards the right-hander at Quarry. Hay 4th in 5th place. There is Tim Hood going well into Quarry. David Mason can go through on the inside line here, and he does so. Mason takes 2nd away from Ben Samuelson, and now David Mason has got to make a bid and getting past Lee Caroline before Caroline gets into his stride and pulls away. In 4th place, though, there is Richard Hay. In 5th is Darren Dowling. Hood 6th, Keane 7th. In 8th place, looks like being Rob Barrett, and Richard Stanton still with a lot of work to do. He's down behind Wayne Phelan at the moment, a long way down in the order. Now let's try and work out why he got onto the grass. Here's the replay of the start. Lee Caroline not that rapid away. Richard Hay's pretty good off the line. Richard Stanton wasn't exactly dynamite. Then he got boxed in, had to lift off there. And cars attacking him left and right. So he lifts off. That cost him time. Up now towards Quarry. So how does he get on the grass then? A bang in the left-hand side. That knocks him across the grass. And Richard Stanton slows the car down so it won't spin. Finds the tarmac again and sets off. It may have been Wayne Phelan that brushed against him. Now that's Tom Ginchard's CDL car that retired in the sprint race, and it's doing likewise in the feature race as well. Tom Ginchard slowly down the pit lane, and that, I'm afraid, is the end of the day for the ex-Mini Stocks and Formula Ford racer. In the meantime, the battles are shaping up nicely around Castle Combe, with Tim Hood there looking for a way onto terms with Philip Keane. Keane looking to try and get past Richard Hay, and the cars now make their way up out of Bobby's, heading down towards Camp Corner this time. Richard Hay in the blue car then, Philip Keane tucked up with him. The race leader Lee Caroline is though now getting away despite David Mason's best efforts. Lee Caroline is disappearing a little bit. In third then you can see as they come over the line, Ben Samuelson, Darren Dowling fourth, Richard Hay fifth. And Richard Hay, who's not had a bad day here at Castle Combe, a little earlier on in the afternoon, he and Michael Kane, a former Tuscan champion, won the GT race for TVR here around the British GT Championship. Lee Caroline though locking up as he turns into quarry, and that may allow David Mason to get a little bit closer to him. Up they come now, heading into the S's. Richard Hay there trying to defend from Philip Keane, and Keane in turn has got Tim Hood with him, and Hood goes through on the inside line. Ex-Honda and Fiesta racer Tim Hood gains a place. And don't rule out Richard Stanton behind them either. Stanton is getting closer and closer and closer all the time. Turning now through Tower, Lee Caroline still the race leader. This is going to be win number 10, remember, if he can do it. They're going through. Car number 10 is Tim Hood. Behind him is Philip Keane, and the cars now accelerate down towards the right, left, right of Bobby's. Richard Hay's car not as quick in this second race as it was in the earlier one we saw here at Castle Combe this weekend. Struggling now to stay on terms with those ahead of him, and if anything now having to work even harder to keep at bay Tim Hood. There's Richard Stanton going through then, recovering after his rally crossing on the first lap, and Stanton, as ever, is absolutely flying. Had a very disappointing time at Le Mans when he was punted by a prototype on his outlap from the pits, and that meant that he didn't even do a full lap. Spent a couple of hours trying to rebuild the car, to no avail. Retirement beckoned, and Richard Hay losing a place there. Tim Hood goes ahead of him. Philip Keane's going to get past as well. Richard Hay must have a problem with that car now. Certainly all is not well, because Richard, we know, is a quick driver. He's had a win at Snetterton this year, but now he's dropping down the order. Before long, he's going to have his fellow Le Mans TVR driver, Richard Stanton, right up behind him. Side by side there, though, look. On the inside, Ben Samuelson. With him is Darren Dowling. The two of them swing out of tower. Samuelson ahead. Dowling still determined to go through. And Lee Caroline, is he being caught again this lap, possibly there by David Mason? I reckon that gap may have come down a little bit. The quickest man on the circuit, though, is Richard Stanton, who's chipping away at the deficit that he has to make up before he can challenge Richard Hay. Out of Camp Corner come the leaders there. Third and fourth, Samuelson and Darren Dowling. Up across the line they go. You can see Darren Dowling being urged on by the pit crew then, and Ben Samuelson in the TVR Engineering, the works car, making his way now up towards Quarry. He's going to lose out though this time if he's not careful, because Dowling with very good speed up the hill there looks for a way past, can't do it. Tries the outside, can't find a way by there, and so still third is Samuelson, and a rather sideways fourth now is Darren Dowling. He's having a look on the inside as well as they come into the S's. Again to no avail. Ben Samuelson closes the door. Thumping the curbs then through the S's, back onto the power now. In the background though, look, you can see Philip Keane being caught by Richard Stanton. Stanton's progress, recovering after his grassy moment at the first corner. He's doing him well now. He's catching the battle between Hood and Keane. Darren Dowling has a look on the inside and goes through this time. Ben made that relatively easy for him. Darren Dowling goes third. Samuelson slips to fourth, and up they come now to Bobby's. The two of them still running nose to tail. Darren Dowling's in-web car keeping the works one at bay. Samuelson trying to fight back as they go now down towards Camp Corner. Race leader thumping the curb. Lee Caroline up front, going then for a 10th victory now. Richard Stanton still chipping away, getting himself up onto terms with Phil Keane ahead of him. Keane in turn wanting away past Tim Hood. Headlights on, Stanton charging. He doesn't have to worry about anybody else around him. Whoops, that's somebody in trouble. That's Jan Persson losing it, coming into Camp Corner. Slides off backwards. That makes him a missing person. He'll be able to rejoin in a moment once he's fired it up. He does so now. Faces the oncoming traffic, swings the car round, and Jan Persson rejoins us there. Richard Stanton goes through on the inside of Phil Keane. A place gain for Richard Stanton. And before long, I reckon he's going to get himself past Tim Hood as well. Out of Old Paddock, through Hammerdown, down towards Tower Corner they will come this time. Now is Stanton going to be able to go through on the inside from a long way back? He brakes very, very, very late. There's a nudge between them. Get out of the way, Tim, says Richard Stanton. Tim Hood nudged wide, and Richard Stanton now comes through to take the place. Third and fourth still Dowling and Samuelson running together. Richard Stanton in aggressive mood now, fifth, and Tim Hood trying to come back at him as they head down towards Camp Corner. Richard Stanton, who's now done the best lap of the race, 67.6 seconds, quicker than people were going in the earlier race here at Combe this weekend, and he hasn't finished yet. Trying and succeeding, in fact, in getting away there from Tim Hood, and now looking to catch up onto the Dowling-Samuelson battle ahead of him. Up they go now towards Quarry. Hood keeping at bay Phil Keane, trying to fight back if he can, but he's not going to be able to do so there. Richard Stanton then coming through Quarry, and Richard Hay in the pit lane. This is Richard rejoining. He's been in, whatever the problem was, the car getting slower and slower. Hopefully they've cured it. Doesn't sound that rapid a car though, but Richard Hay rejoining the race. Lee Caroline then, the race leader, heading out of Tower, chased by David Mason. Dowling third, Samuelson fourth, Stanton fifth, Hood sixth, and Philip Keane in seventh place now. In towards Bobby's. Lee Caroline though, about to come into Camp Corner. Checkered flag for him this time. This is going to be win number 10 in the Carlube TVR Tuscan Challenge. He accelerates now, up across the line. There's the checkered flag. Lee Caroline is victorious yet again. David Mason comes through for second, and Richard Stanton fifth after not the best of starts to the race, but a great recovery. Richard Stanton fifth, and also setting the fastest lap of the race as well, at an average of just over 98 miles an hour. Wayne Phelan coming home there, ahead of Rod Barrett. They make it home 8th and 9th, with Jan Persson recovering to round out the top 10. Confirmation of those results, Caroline, a 10th win of the season, ahead of Mason and Dowling. They'll head to the podium, but Lee Caroline, a very happy man.
I was really pushing hard then, because I didn't want... I looked in my mirror once and David was, he was very close to me, so I just put my head down and drove hard and fast. I wasn't even taking it reserved really, so that's why I pulled such a big gap.
Yeah, it's about time we've got some reward for the work we've had this week and weekend. I did have a small concern. Some antifreezes appeared on the windscreen. I thought any minute now a hose is going to go. That's why I backed off towards the end. So yeah, we're pleased with the result.
I could see the people behind were dropping off a little bit. And Ben was a bit ragged in a few places. Found my spot, picked him off, and then thought, well, I'm not going to get any further than this because they're too far in front, so I'll just stay where I am.
So Lee Caroline increases his lead in the championship. David Mason second, Ben Samuelson third, ahead of Keane, Dowling and Phelan, with Tim Hood now in seventh, ahead of Rod Barrett. This is Alton Park. It's the Carlube TVR Tuscan Challenge, and it's round 8 of the series, being led by Lee Caroline. He's had 10 wins already this year. He's the man in form once again. 2 races here at the picturesque Cheshire Circuit, and the championship leader will start the first of them on pole position. Opposition in the championship, though, comes from David Mason and then Ben Samuelson, who's third. But for race 1, Lee Caroline is the man in charge. He lines up here on pole position.
I mean, the second in racing terms is a lot. So I think I was just lucky the time I picked to go out to do my qualifying lap. And we've only done 3 or 4 laps, so hopefully we've saved the tyres for the race, which will be a big thing. So hopefully we should, if we get off the line, we should be all right.
Big surprise alongside him, though, Tim Hood. We know he's quick, but he's never been this far up before.
It was a hard session out there, very, very slippy. Temperature's gone up today quite a lot. We knew we were going to have to get it in the first 2 or 3 laps. Fortunately, we had a bit of a throttle problem. I had to come in, the lads sorted it, and we took a chance and went back out again. And it paid off. Times were slower than yesterday, but still good enough for seconds, so yeah, we're pleased to bits, yeah.
Lining up on the inside of row 2, Philip Keane, and he's pretty chuffed with his grid position as well.
Yeah, it's got to happen this weekend, isn't it? We've been knocking on the door for so long now. I'm pretty happy with third. I mean, we had a few problems. I think the car was bottoming out and we had a bit of understeer around the fast corners, so there's a bit of time to be gained there, but other than that, I think this is the weekend.
So let's see whether Phil Keane can take a maiden win. We're 5 seconds away from the start of the sprint race here at Alton Park. It's going to be an 8-lap race. The lights go to green. Good start being made by Tim Hood. Lee Caroline, as ever, not that quick off the line. David Mason's yellow car, though, makes a good start, and Mason leads into the first corner at Old Hall. Darren Dowling squeezes through ahead of Richard Hay. Phil Keane runs wide. Very wide he goes, all over the grass. Another car, possibly Paul Sherd, does likewise behind him. But it's David Mason in the lead as they come into Cascades for the first time. Hood second, Caroline third, Ben Samuelson fourth. And a bit of contact then in the background. Hugh Marshall, I think it was, being lent on by Jan Persson. So, down Lakeside Straight for the first time go the cars. Mason ahead of Hood. Bit of a gap opening up between them and the opposition. Further back you saw Wayne Phelan looking for a way through on the inside. Ben Samuelson there trying to set about Lee Caroline coming into Shell Oil's corner. out of the right-hander. On the power, heading now towards Fulston's. The top two running nose to tail. That should enable Lee Caroline to inch up onto the back of them in a moment or two. Out of Fulston's then, clip the curb, accelerate up over the brow of the hill and then down towards the new look, Knickerbrook. The very tight and slow chicane replaced now by a slightly more flowing sequence of corners into which David Mason, the leader, turns. It's still a right, left and then a right back onto the old circuit, but it's much smoother than it was. Lee Caroline is back with the top two. There, further back, Phil Keane battling with Darren Dowling. Dowling on the outside line coming out of Knickerbrook. Can he go through? We'll see in a moment as they come uphill. Heading to Lodge Corner, Dowling is ahead of Keane, but Keane's backing him on the inside line there, and through he goes. Phil Keane retakes the place, brave effort that. Out of Druids, down towards Lodge Corner, Mason getting away, Tim Hood now trying to fend off Lee Caroline for second place. Ben Samuelson fourth, Phil Keane fifth, in sixth place is Dowling, seventh is Richard Hay, and at the end of one lap, David Mason is well clear. Look at this for second place, Caroline up on the inside, braking late, but Tim Hood just able to claim the line for the corner. Hood second, third is Caroline. And while they're battling like that, of course, it's enabling the race leader to get away. Down towards Cascades, Lee Caroline looking for a way through, can't do it there. 4.5 litre identical Blackpool-built sports cars, they, as ever, are giving great racing, and your cameraman now is Ben Samuelson. He's in fourth place, he's heading towards Island Bend, turn left, and then set the car up for the banked right-hander of Shell Oils. Ben changes down, swings right, hoping that this battle ahead of him between Hood and Caroline delays the drivers involved sufficiently to let Ben get back onto terms with Lee Caroline. Heading now towards Fulston's. It's left, right and left again. Both of them there using the curve, trying to straighten the corner as much as possible. Accelerating now over the brow of the hill, down towards Knickerbrook. Hood on the inside line there, trying to defend from Lee Caroline. Succeeding in defending from Lee Caroline as well. They're still nose to tail as they come through Knickerbrook now. Making their way. Any moment up Clay Hill, fourth is Samuelson, now fifth on his own is Phil Keane, getting away from Darren Dowling now, and possibly Phil Keane's another one to watch here, but Lee Caroline is alongside Tim Hood for second place, through he goes. Going up Clay Hill, Lee Caroline takes second away from Hood. That then gives the championship leader another place. His next target is David Mason. Going to be fascinating to see whether he can catch up to Mason. Both of them are quick drivers. Mason certainly built up a good advantage at the end of the first couple of laps of the race here. Tim Hood not letting Caroline get away. We're on board with Tuscan returnee Paul Sheard, the former hot rod racer, an ASCAR racer, an Eurocar racer, you name it, he's driven it. Tucked up there behind Rod Barrett as the cars then now make their way up out of Deerleak, past the new impressive race control building, side by side, down towards Old Hall. Sheard on the inside goes through, so Paul Sheard gains the place there in the CDL Synergy car. Out of Old Hall, down now through the right-hander of Denton's and then into Cascades, the road plunging away. Set the car up, swing left, another battle here going on. Hugh Marshall being caught by Vincent Vellatini in his first ever Tuscan race. The race sport car run by Dennis Leach right up now with Hugh Marshall. That's Ben Samuelson hard at work. He's trying to close on Tim Hood and he's taking with him Philip Keane, and this is the view from Pete Osborne's car coming into Knickerbrook. Right, left, back on the power now. Wayne Phelan ahead of him in the InWeb Insane racing car. Pete Osborne returning to the series now, powering his way uphill underneath the footbridge. The car goes light then at the top of the hill, heading now towards Druids. Phelan also looking to try to gain a place here. They turn right through Druids now. Three of them here, running effectively, nose to tail. Osborne attacking Phelan, but Phelan making a bid on the inside there. Going ahead of what looks like being Rod Barrett's car. Through he goes then, and Pete Osborne gains a place as well. Out of Lodge Corner, up Deerleak, bit of tar smoke, and Pete Osborne now powering his way past the pits. Next target then, Wayne Phelan. He's gained one place on that lap. Is he going to be able to get onto terms to really attack Phelan for another place? We haven't seen too much of Pete Osborne lately. He had an accident at Croft. Well, now he's back in the series and going well. Newly painted car, going better than ever. Phil Keane also improving race by race. He was saying before this sprint race got underway, he thought that he could take a win this weekend. Well, at the moment, he's going to have to work very hard for it, but Ben Samuelson, a bit sideways and ragged ahead of him, is coming under pressure now from Phil Keane. Look at the green and white car in the background. Ben in the purple Tuscan fends him off as they dive down to Knickerbrook. Into the corner, out of the main part of Knickerbrook, now back onto the old circuit, and Phil Keane tucked right up behind TVR's PR man, looking for a way by, heading up Clay Hill once again. Still hasn't really been able to dislodge Ben Samuelson. They go under the footbridge. Now coming into Druids. Look at the gap between the leaders. It is coming right down. David Mason is now being reeled in by Lee Caroline. Tim Hood going well in that third place as they come underneath the vehicle bridge down to Lodge Corner. Ben Samuelson, fourth at the moment and defending vigorously because Philip Keen's tucked up behind him there. Turn right through Lodge Corner, the road drops away, then they climb up out of Deer Leap. Past the pits they come now. Down towards Old Hall Corner, Samuelson defending, but Phil Keen diving up on the inside, they touch there. Philip Keen scrabbles past, that was a good move, it was a brave move and it works. Phil Keen goes fourth, so Keen ahead of Samuelson now, who didn't give him that much room, but Phil Keen takes full advantage of what little gap he was presented with, and Ben Samuelson tries to fight back, realises that wasn't on, stands on the brakes, locks up, runs wide, loses a length or two, so that takes the pressure now off Phil Keen a little bit. It may, of course, allow Keen now to get onto terms with Tim Hood. Out of Island Bend, up towards Shell. You're on board with Ben Samuelson. The race leaders are nose to tail, a bit further up the road. Tim Hood's lonely in third, but he might be caught before much longer by Phil Keen, who's catching him all the while, but there are the leaders, they're nose to tail. David Mason ahead of Lee Caroline. Through Fulstons they go. Caroline using more of the curbs there, trying to get right onto terms now with Mason. Mason leading, but Lee Caroline, the championship leader, 10 times a winner this year, is right up behind him. He locks up though, coming into Knickerbrook. Lee Caroline sorts himself out, but David Mason hangs on to the lead, of course. They're in third place, Tim Hood, fourth and fifth, Keen and Samuelson, and somebody off there, that's Wayne Phelan. He's lost it coming out of Shell, but midway between Shell and Fulstons. Not a very common place to find a car. Anyway, he rejoins. Jan Persson going ahead of him. Rod Barrett will tuck in behind. So Wayne Phelan, having gained a few places earlier on, has got to try and redo all the hard work. Here's the replay. On board with Pete Osborne. Ahead of him is Wayne Phelan, and let's try and work out what went wrong. He applies the power coming out of Shell Oils, runs wide onto the grass, keeps his foot in, and inevitably the car swaps ends and round it goes. Race leaders then, nose to tail. Look at third though behind them. 3 cars running tight together now. Lee Caroline still looking for a way past David Mason as they clip the curb coming through Fulstons. Well, David Mason's doing a good job at the moment of defending. We're on board with Ben Samuelson. He's still 5th. Ahead of him though is Phil Keen, and Keen now right on the tail of Tim Hood. This is the fight to look for. 3rd, 4th and 5th down to Knickerbrook. Samuelson looking for a way past the green-reared car of Keen. And Phil Keen also looking to try to dislodge Tim Hood, going really well. The best we've seen from Tim Hood all season, this. Front row of the grid, 3rd in the race, making his way now up Clay Hill. Philip Keen tucked up behind him, trying one side and the other. And Ben Samuelson possibly now waiting for it to end in tears. Keen looking up the inside, Hood moves across and covers the line, going now into Druids. Out of the right-hander, under the vehicle bridge, down now towards Lodge Corner. Keen has a look on the inside, but there just isn't a gap. If he wants to get past Tim Hood, he's going to have to be brave and go the hot rod way, the outside line, and it's not going to work at Lodge for him. Up Deer Leap they come. Samuelson just lagging back a length or two. I hesitate to say dropping back in case this is part of Ben's master plan. Phil Keen round the outside at Old Hall. He locks up. There's lots of tires. They lean on each other. Tim Hood's got the inside line as they come out of the corner. Phil Keen runs wide. Ben Samuelson is right back with them now, looking for a way past. Keen under intense pressure. He's trying to attack and defend at the same time. Fantastic scrap this. Tim Hood just hanging on to 3rd place, but right up behind him now, Philip Keen. Now Keen's got the pace in a straight line again there. Look, Samuelson drops back a length or two. Into Island Bend they go. Phil Keen just can't find a Tuscan-sized gap. Samuelson goes into the back of him. Dear oh dear, Ben breaking ludicrously late. Thumps the back of Philip Keen's car. You saw the bodywork fold there. Bits fall off the front of Ben Samuelson's car. Has that done any serious damage? Let's see. Down towards Fulstons they go. Tim Hood in 3rd. Can Keen recover? Kicks up a lot of dirt, and that's Hood going off! Hood spins, put the power down too early, coming out of Hilltop. Tim Hood spins. So Keen goes 3rd, Samuelson goes 4th. The leaders, Mason and Caroline, are going out of Knickerbrook. Into it goes Philip Keen, into it goes Ben Samuelson. The race leaders are at Druids now for the last time, nose to tail. Lee Caroline has not yet found a way past David Mason. Is he going to be able to do so at the last corner? Lee Caroline tries on the outside line as they come into the braking area. He's got his nose ahead this time. He's desperately late on the brakes. They come into the corner. Mason's back on the inside. Through the corner they go. Caroline loses it. Round he goes. Off he goes. All the way round. Lee Caroline spins. Up Deer Leap to win is David Mason. But who's going to be 2nd then? That's Lee Caroline recovering just ahead of Philip Keen. Now Keen's got the momentum. It's going to be a virtual dead heat on the line between the two of them. Keen just takes 2nd. 3rd over the line, Lee Caroline. Ben Samuelson takes 4th. And that was all a result of what happened at Lodge Corner on the last lap. Lee Caroline went in too quickly, comes out in third place. Confirmation of the results there. That'll be the top 10 on the grid for the feature race. But David Mason, your winner.
We didn't quite know what was going to happen during the race, so I had to make as best start as I could, really, try and make up as much ground as possible. Reason being, we had a shock absorber fail on us in qualifying, which is why I struggled to do a decent lap time. So we changed the suspension completely because we didn't have another one exactly the same, so we had to put a pair of front suspension units on the car. And unfortunately it worked out quite all right, actually. We were, finishing first was a lot better improvement than Castle Combe.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good race. David got a good start and he drove a good race, but I wheeled him in and I could see there was 3 laps to go, so I thought I won't make any rash move. I'll just wait till he hopefully makes a mistake, which he did on the run up the hill. So I got the run on him and drew alongside him into Lodge, and I thought I'd just drive around the outside, but I think he went in too fast, missed his braking point and hit me in the side and spun me round, which put me on the grass, as you can probably see. But that's racing, isn't it? I'm not going to moan, but he drove a good race, so.
We're ready for the feature race of round 8 of the Carlube TVR Tuscan Challenge. It should have been 10 laps. We're down to 8 though because the programme's run a bit behind. So it's a short, sharp blast. The lights go to green. Away they go. David Mason makes a good start. Richard Hay doesn't get away at all there. Lots of arm waving, but I'm afraid that just draws attention to the fact that Richard is stranded on the grid. Everybody else down towards Old Hall Corner. It is Mason just in the lead. Phil Keane second as sideways Lee Caroline makes his way through. And looking to see whether or not Richard Hay did get away. I think he has done, but way back now. Through Cascades for the first time they go, and Richard Hay then with work to do. He is moving, he's at the back of the field. He'll be able to catch up with the tail enders pretty shortly, but then he's got this busy task of trying to get through to the front where David Mason and Phil Keane are almost side by side. Phil Keane yet to win in a Tuscan. He's going to have a look on the inside, coming into Shell Oils. There's a gap on the inside, surely he's going to get the lead. Yes! Phil Keane goes through on the inside line there. That was a good move, and there's contact here as Pete Osborne attacks Peter Wheeler. Turfs him up the grass on the inside there. Peter Wheeler not very happy about that, carries on. Wayne Phelan goes round the outside of them, and the leaders come down towards Knickerbrook for the first time. Phil Keane in the lead of the race, ahead of Mason. Caroline is third, Ben Samuelson is fourth. Through Knickerbrook for the first time. Fifth is Darren Dowling. In sixth place is Paul Sheard. Seventh is Tim Hood, who went so well in the first race. Eighth there is Wayne Phelan. Ninth is Peter Wheeler. 10th Hugh Marshall. 11th Pete Osborne. 12th and 13th Barrett ahead of Pearson. 14th is Vincent Bellatini, and Richard Hay 15th after that dreadful start. So Keane leading. Is he getting away? Well, he is by a length or two, I think, now, because David Mason's a bit busy trying to fend off Lee Caroline. But now, as they come down towards Lodge Corner, Keane, Mason, Caroline inching up onto one another. Tim Hood gains a place up on the inside of Paul Sheard there. The CDL car, through he goes. Tim Hood gains a place. The Bachmann Europe car then moves through as the leaders come across the line with Caroline on the inside of David Mason. There's Tarsmoke as he locks up going in towards Old Hall. Keane fending off Caroline. Out of the corner they come. Mason looking for a way back ahead of Lee Caroline, and Lee trying to attack and defend. Look at this, weaving from one side to the other. Down towards Cascades. What Phil Keane really needs is for those two behind to carry on like this, arguing over second place, and then that should enable Phil Keane to get away. But it's not going to be an easy task. Here they come. Mason alongside Caroline once again. He has a look on the inside going into Ireland Bend, but to no avail. Lee Caroline doesn't often lose places. Now he's gained second off David Mason. That's where he intends to stay, at least for the time being, until he can wrest the lead away from Philip Keane. Fourth is Ben Samuelson as they come out of Shell. Bit of a gap between the leading quartet and the rest of them, with Darren Dowling fifth at the moment. Down towards Falston as they go, turning left, turning right, turning left again. Sixth is Tim Hood now getting away from Paul Sheard, and I reckon that Hood could get fifth before much longer. Here are the leaders now, making their way over hilltop, down towards Knickerbrook. Lee Caroline having a tentative look, I think, then on the inside, but to no real effect. Phil Keane hanging on to the advantage. Up they come, out of Knickerbrook now, heading up Clay Hill. Whoops, that's a sideways Caroline using a bit of the dirt coming out of the corner there. David Mason dropping a long way back very suddenly as well. Now Lee Caroline looking at the quickest man on the circuit, Philip Keane under pressure. The car a little bit crossed up, then it went into Druids, and you get the feeling that if Caroline, or when Caroline gets past Keane, he's going to be able to break away. He has a look on the inside coming into Lodge Corner. Philip Keane breaks late but locks up, and Lee Caroline goes through up on the inside line there. So Caroline is the new race leader. Out of Dearly, Keane looking to try to fight back. David Mason going with him as they come across the line now. Lee Caroline the leader, Philip Keane in second place. Another good scrap going on here. Look, Richard Hayes at the back of it, looking for a way to get past Rod Barrett. Barrett in turn is fed up looking at the rear of Pete Osborne's car, and the three of them run now up Dear Leap. Hay, in theory, the quicker of the three. He's going to get alongside Rod Barrett as they come across the line. Richard Hay, part of TVR's Le Mans attack this year, is not going to be able to get through. The TVR dealer, Rod Barrett, closes the door, and Richard Hay now has to tuck in behind him. Down towards Cascades they come now. Pete Osborne at the head of this little queue, and Richard Hay, surprisingly, in the TVR engineering car, not yet able to work his way past, and that makes you think that Richard's got a problem. Runs wide as well there, over the curb and onto the dirt. Hay had a win at Snetterton. We know he's a quick driver. We haven't really seen the best of him, though, this year. Good battle here. Darren Dowling still just able to keep Tim Hood at bay as they make the run now up towards Fulton. This is Pete Osborne. That's the tyre wall. That's a big impact as well. A very strange place to end up. Pete Osborne suddenly finds himself going over the grass, through the gravel and hard into the tyre wall. Well, he ran out of road at Island Bend. Why he was off the road remains to be seen. That's a big impact. We've seen in the past, though, that TVR Tuscans are strong cars. Pete Osborne's okay. A bit shaken, possibly, because that was a sizable impact, that. So Pete Osborne out of the race. I'd love to know how he ended up on the grass, though, there. Down towards Lodge Corner. Race leaders turning through the right-hander. And this battle further back. This, of course, for 5th place. Darren Dowling versus Tim Hood. Coming now down towards Lodge. For the time being, Dowling keeping Hood at bay. They make the run now up over the start and finish line. Tim Hood having a look on the inside, being urged on by the team. He's got the ideal line for Old Hall Corner. This should give Tim Hood the place. It does give Tim Hood the place, as long as he doesn't run wide. A little bit wider than Dowling, but not sufficiently to delay him. So, Tim Hood up into 5th place now. The race leaders then head down towards us. Lee Caroline ahead of Phil Keane, David Mason 3rd, and Ben Samuelson a bit lonely at the moment in 4th place. He's not yet been caught by Hood, but he's fallen away from the leading trio. Yellow flag out there because of Pete Osborne's car in the tyres on the inside of Shallows Corner. Now here's the replay, let's see. He turns into Island Bend on slightly too tight a line, I reckon. That means that he runs wide, gets onto the grass, and from then on, I'm afraid he's a passenger. The gravel doesn't stop him, the tyre wall does. And Pete Osborne, with a big old impact, is out of the race. Glad that he's okay, but the car looking a bit second-hand, to say the least. So, the leaders turn their way now through Old Hall. Phil Keane not dropping away too much from Lee Caroline. David Mason has fallen away in 3rd place. Richard Hayes still a bit frustrated that he can't find a way past Rod Barrett as they come now up Dear Leap over the line. Hay past the pits. He has a look on the inside line here to try to level with Rod Barrett. Hard on the brakes as they dive down towards Old Hall. Richard Hayes scrabbles for grip on the inside. He should be able to go through. He does. He comes out of the corner ahead, so Hay gains a place, but some consolation this, of course, given that it was a bad start, and Richard normally should be up with the cars you're looking at now, battling for the lead. Now Ben Samuelson is the next man to watch, I reckon, here, because he's catching up onto the rear of David Mason's CDL car ahead of him then. The yellow and red one of Mason. The Works TVR engineering car. There it is of Ben Samuelson. You're on board with him now. Coming into Fulston's. Threading his way through that left, avoiding the cones and the curbs. And now powering his way over Hilltop, heading down now towards Knickerbrook. Hard on the brakes, turned into the first element of the corner. Turn right, turn left, then right again. That gradually takes you back onto the old circuit, the original Knickerbrook. And then the cars power uphill. Samuelson certainly closing on Mason. Whether he's going to do it in time, I rather doubt, because this is the last lap. Lee Caroline making his way out of Druids, down towards Lodge Corner. Philip Keane behind him, still after a brace of seconds this weekend, proving his pace, but not able to take a first Tuscan win. And Lee Caroline is about to win for the 11th time as he comes now up out of Dear Leap. Blast across the line. Lee Caroline is victorious yet again. Lee Caroline wins the feature race here at Alton Park. Second over the line, Philip Keane, and David Mason just able there to hang on to 3rd ahead of Ben Samuelson as they come across the line nose to tail. What's going to happen for 5th place? Well, it's going to be Tim Hood who comes across the line ahead of Darren Dowling. Then Paul Sherd, but for 8th, 9th and 10th, you're looking at it now. Wayne Phelan for 8th, 9th is going to be Peter Wheeler, and there Richard Hay to round out the top 10 after that dreadful start, but at least he does, as I say, get into the top 10 by the end of the race. The race won by Lee Caroline from Keane and Mason, Samuelson, Hood and Dowling, the top 6.
My start wasn't too bad. Ben was coming up on the outside and Darren on the inside, so I just held my ground and then hunted David down, because after yesterday's little touch at Lodge and coming 3rd, I needed to win that race, so that's what I done. I tried my hardest and lucky enough pulled a little bit of space towards the end there, so good win. I'm glad about that.
I think we should have won today. but we had the front splitter was hanging off towards the end as well, which didn't help. But I think we'll win at Rockingham.
I was trying to chase and put pressure on Phil, who was also putting pressure on Lee in hope that they would make a mistake. Fortunately for them and unfortunately for me, they drove a great race, and all credit to them.
So this is how the championship now looks. Lee Caroline ahead of David Mason, ahead of Philip Keane. Ben Samuelson slips to 4th, Darren Dowling is 5th, and Tim Hood rounds out the top 6.